Are we launch ourselves? Are we ready to launch? I think we are.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I'm ready.
I'm going to put
right.
this on. Hi, Della. How are you?
Good morning, Della.
Nice to see you. I'm going
I
to
don't
put.
think he's completely in yet.
He's working on his little dots are,
Wavering.
yeah, he's trying.
I put us on mute while we do our Om together. So here comes Della. So let's begin our morning session by taking 3 deep breaths together. And with a deep in-breath. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Morning, Della. How are you?
Good morning, Steve. Doing well. How are you?
Good, good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too.
I'm going to start our screen share now. Second tier circle. June the 14th. All right, so second tier circle, no religion. Not having an ego. I thought this morning we would begin with where we left off last week with a little review, because the information was kind of startling or kind of hard to believe, not having an ego. This I, this ego, is just a mental concept. That was so surprising to me when I saw that. This I is just a mental concept, a product of thought. There's nothing substantial or permanent upon which it is based. My goodness, we've been calling ourselves I ever since our mothers told us, don't do that. Don't do this. So it's pretty much embedded in our consciousness. So we're going to look at today what some of the benefits might be of letting go of that, softening up a little bit, and why we might want to do it, and what's next. According to Buddhadasa, there's no I, there's only an ever-changing process flowing according to causes and conditions. Ever-flowing process. But ignorance, he asserts, misconstrues this process to be a permanent entity, a self and an ego, an I. So he says it was out of ignorance. Life, human life, is merely a collection of 5 aggregates. Kanta, remember that? Human life is a collection of aggregates, each functioning according to nature, according to causes and conditions. And here's the 5 khandha, our body, feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness. These are all the things that we experience, our body, different feelings, perceiving the thoughts in our head, and just the feeling of being conscious, being here, being alive. That's what we experience. The I we experience is just a mental concept. Human life functions according to causes and conditions. Human life is naturally free of attachment and selfishness. So our body, our feelings, our perception, our thoughts, our consciousness are naturally free of attachment and selfishness. That's something that we've developed along with this I consciousness. There's an I. This is mine. There are consequences of not having an ego, if that's the path we want to take, of not, within the mind, having an I and mine. Outwardly, we may say I and my, according to social conventions, but don't let them exist in the mind or heart. How the devil are we going to do that? Outwardly, we say, I am this, I am that. This is my body, my eyes, my hair, my fingernails. But how can we not let them exist in the mind? Just have these be perceptions. Externally, he asserts we should behave the same as others do, eat like they eat, and work like they work, and speak like others speak. So we're not going to make we're not going to make ourselves look silly to others. So we speak in what he calls the people language. This is my house. This is mine. Our people language. There's nothing wrong in using these words when necessary, but don't let the mind get attached to them or fall for them. So we're going to take a look at doing that ourselves. Leave such words on the outside. Don't let them into the mind. Don't believe them. So even if they show up as thoughts in the mind, that's okay. We need to learn how to step back from them and not believe them so we don't get attached to these eyes and minds. We ought to train ourselves this way, he says, that is, mouth is one and mind another. The mouth says one thing, but the heart knows otherwise. Actually, the mouth is one and the mind might be the same, but our heart, looking at the mind, may know otherwise. And of course, he says if we can achieve this distinction, this is the path to reducing the suffering that we sometimes experience in life, which he asserts is associated with this I and my consciousness, suffering. So that's what we have to look at. If we experience some suffering at some point in our lives, even small things, especially small things, so we can practice, just a small suffering, just a small upset in some interaction with someone, something someone says, something someone does, something we see in social media or on the news, and we get a little off kilter, a little upset at what's going on. in those small things, that's the opportunity to practice stepping back and saying, that's the mind having this idea that there is an I, that's the subject or object, what's going on. And see if we can use this practice to soften up any upset or suffering we're experiencing. Well, he says, the mouth says one thing, but the heart knows otherwise. A behavior that we used to condemn and try to abandon because of its dishonesty becomes the most noble and excellent form of speech.
Interesting concept.
So here he has a little bit of fun. You know, we're told that you should speak your truth. So if your one truth is in your mind and you're saying something else, that means you're being dishonest and you're lacking integrity. So we've probably experienced people who we have this sense are not being straight with us. We just get this feeling there's something going on in their minds, but what they're communicating to us isn't that. So they're not being straight with us. And yet, here's a recommendation that we do exactly the same, but at a higher level. And just having to do with the I and mind. Just separating ourselves in our mind from the I and mind. And being at ease and comfortable and feeling our integrity as we speak to others, because our job is not to fix them or train them in our ways, but rather to be at one with their consciousness. Make sense? To be honest in both mouth and mind, that is speech and thought in people language. Is people language. People language. And Dhamma language, he says, is when we're able in our heart of hearts to look at our mind and not get attached to those, this is mine, I did this, I'm responsible, I'm guilty, I sinned, I did an evil thing. He's saying that's people language, not Dhamma language. I don't know about you folks, but I have some things in my past experience that if I look at them, I can say, oh, that was a time when I did a dishonest thing. Fortunately, not too many of them in my life. But I remember one particular one a long time ago when I was a kid, and I think it had to do with selling my car. And somehow someone gave me some extra money that they shouldn't have, $60. And I should have returned that to them, and I didn't. And I felt like I'd gained something. And then they called me on it, and I felt guilty, and I returned the money. And I thought, oh, I did a wrong thing there. I was guilty at the time. So how can I remove myself from that I and mine and see what went on there just as a result of causes and effects and processes? How can I do that? There was a time when I had a little game in the grocery store. And if this was before they had scanners, the people who rang up the till had to memorize all the prices of everything. Remember those days?
Whew.
That was a way back. Took longer to get through the lines because you couldn't scan things. So if I saw that the person at the cash register charged me less than they should have, I felt like I gained something, that 50 cents or 10 cents, a dollar. I thought, oh, I'm coming out ahead, even though it was a lack of integrity on my part. And then later on, I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. So whenever these days, if I get something extra, I say, no, you didn't charge me enough. Fix that. Of course, I'm happy to point out when they overcharge me too, it's all the same thing, and all results in peace. And yet, can I step back from my own person there and see that it's just the processes of life that were going on there? Step back from that. So those are some examples from my life of how I had an I did this, I was guilty of that consciousness. And how we can not only train ourselves in the present to separate ourselves, but as some of those past instances of actions in our life come up, and if you are out of integrity in your life, they are going to be still in your mind. You can call them up. At least that's my experience of life. So if you can call those things up, thank you, God. It's an opportunity for some cleanup. Cleanup. Here we spend, well, not 24 hours a day because we're sleeping for a lot of it, but all this time during the day, and all these things are going on and happening, and yet there's only some things that stick in our memory. Some things, peak moments, and these times when we're out of integrity. A couple of examples. Okay. Outwardly, in our speech and actions, we may possess all the things that others possess, but in the mind, we possess nothing. Possess nothing. Please give it some thought, he says. This idea of possessing. It's one thing to hear about these things, it's another to experience them for ourselves. So I put together a little exercise. So we might take a look at ourselves and just see if there's anything we want to clean up or work on. We may find something, we may not. So here we go. Exercise. I think we're going to do this exercise the same way we've done some of the others. I'm going to repeat something out loud. And then I'm going to ask you to repeat it to yourself, and maybe repeat it to yourself a second time. So you can take a deep look at it and see if something comes up for you. So for this exercise, I recommend we take a couple of breaths together. Make sure our feet are on the ground and experience our feet, toes, balls of our feet, heels of our feet, touching the ground, the floor. So we feel grounded. We feel grounded. To be aware of our hands. What are our hands doing now? Are they moving? Are they quiet? Be aware of the palms facing down, palms up, and be aware of our hands. And another nice deep breath. Here we go. Think to yourself this thought. This is my body. This is my body. Now ask to yourself with regard to this thought, this is my body. Ask to yourself, can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Repeat to yourself, this is my body. And then repeat twice. Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Can you experience that thought in your mind? This is my body. And as you say to yourself, can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Can you notice that going through your mind? Just notice. We'll do one more of these. Think to yourself, these are my feelings, feeling right now. These are my feelings. These are my feelings. Thinking that thought, ask yourself, can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? These are my feelings. Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Repeat to yourself. Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? We'll do a third one, and that'll close it. Think to yourself, these are my thoughts. These are my thoughts. These thoughts are my thoughts. They're mine. Now ask to yourself, can you step back from your own mind, your thoughts, and thus understand all things? These are my thoughts. Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Om, Om, Om. I never know quite for sure how these little exercises will work for people. Anything anyone would like to share or questions before we go on?
That was a tough one in that it's difficult to understand something and not have it be a thought. And I guess that the process of trying to take that in creates lots of thoughts in my mind.
It is interesting. I find when I do this that this exercise, I don't really understand anything because I think, like you're saying, understanding has to do with more thoughts.
Mhm.
Understanding involves more thoughts. So when I try to step back from my mind, I just experience my mind thinking and I'm watching. It's not that I really understand anything. I'm just there with that process, maybe for an instant, before my mind starts thinking more thoughts. I think
I can do
that's,
that.
pardon?
I can do that.
Good. Perhaps the understanding all things is not an intellectual understanding. Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Perhaps it's not an intellectual understanding, but rather it's a more standing under, observing, understand, stand under all things, standing under and just being part of the process and flow of life, the causes and effect, noticing how we are subject to causes. The causes that we can experience are our reactive minds, how our minds just seem to pop up with things. This happens to me. I'm just minding my own business and my mind pops up with things that it wants to think about. So there are causes that I can experience, and the effects are more thoughts. So I don't understand all the causes, but I do experience what the effects are, more thoughts, and what you call monkey mind. The mind just keeps going on and on. So to the extent that we can have this experience of observing the mind, we are told this is the way towards experiencing our true peace, who we really are. Just stepping outside of our mental processes a little bit. Any other comments or questions before we move on to humility?
I think that word experience works better for me than understand.
Me too.
Mhm.
Me too. That's why I translated understand to stand under.
Yeah.
If I'm standing under it, I can experience it.
Mhm.
Let's
Okay.
talk. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan. Let's talk about humility. Humility and the role of humility. The Buddha taught not to boast or should be or show off. The Buddha taught not to boast or show off. And Jesus emphasized this point even more. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches us to do our religious practices in secret so as not to let others see. Remember that? Sermon on the Mount, Jesus taught that we should do our religious practices in secret, so as to not let others see what's going on there. And the Buddhist tradition has something similar. Do these religious practices in secret, praying. Remember, Jesus said, don't pray on the street corners like the hypocrites do. Rather, go in your closet and pray. When I was a younger person and I read that, I thought, gosh, that seems kind of strange. Of course, our closets in those days weren't walk-in closets like we have nowadays. They were kind of small. And if you wanted to get in your closet, you'd have to crouch down on your hands and knees underneath the clothes to get in there and pray. But do them in secret, praying, giving. Do your giving in secret. And do your charitable works in secret. Do your fasting in secret. Any one of you practice fasting at all? Apparently it's quite, yes. I see heads shaking, no.
Yeah, I've tried. It doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work for me. I'm not willing to stick to it long enough to have it work for me.
Apparently at the time that Jesus was living, fasting was something that was done more. Done more. I'm not sure in our modern Western society that it's part of the popular thing to do. We don't see much talk about it or much social support for it. I did some fasting a while back because I decided I wanted to lose some weight. And I did that. I did a alternate day fasting, it's called. And I lost about 20 pounds, which suited me because I'd really gotten too heavy. Anyway, I just made my mind up I was going to do it till I lost that weight. And like you say, Susan, it was a bit onerous, especially the first part of the day of fasting. By the time the day was almost over, I was okay with it. Somehow it was okay. During the middle of the day, it was tough. These days, I choose to do a partial fast. One day a week, I eat breakfast, and then I just don't eat the rest of the day. And I've tried to use that practice not only to keep my body in good shape, but also I think about other people in other parts of the world who don't have all the food that we have and what their experience of hunger might be like. So I try and relate my experience of hunger to what someone else who doesn't have food might be experiencing. And then I drink some tea and the hunger pain goes away, or I get busy doing something and I don't notice it. No, I haven't done that practice in secret, have I? Because I just told you all about it. Bragged about it. Well, in a sense, one can't help bragging a little bit, but the scriptures say don't do that. Don't brag about things. Just do them in secret. Why? If it's something we want others to see, that means we want to show off. Well, I admit, folks, if there ever was a show off, it's me. You know, my mother encouraged it. I can still remember as a kid riding in front of the house on my bicycle, no hands, and my mother being on the front porch, and I said, "Look, Ma, no hands." And she went, "Attaboy, Steve." and I showed off. And that was special for me. Here I am in my 80s, it's still special.
There's something to be said for being an example to others.
Yes. Yes, an example is important. So if we're attached to things like that, and it's something we want others to see, that means we want to show off, which is attachment. I think there's a difference, like you say, Susan, between being attached to it, making a point of telling everybody about it, and using your own life experience as an example. So when we want others to see those things, that means we're attached to it. Jesus stresses this point in many ways, both in his sermons and elsewhere. And here's some examples of Jesus' teachings. When offering prayers to God, fasting, or practicing austerities, don't let others see. And you know, sometimes that reminds me of how in the Christian tradition and in unity, we have this practice of doing public prayers. We're sitting in church or in front of television. And someone says, let's pray. And we all pray together. And yet the scripture says to us when offering prayers, don't let others see. So maybe we can pick some other times for praying when we're not displaying ourselves. Not displaying ourselves. Or do we sense when we're praying in church that others are noticing us? Or do we just sense that we're in the state of prayer and we're not doing it to be noticed? I think there's a difference. When I pray in church, yes, Susan?
The intention, yeah.
The intention. Yeah, actually, when I'm praying in church, I'm not quite aware of others noticing me when I'm praying. But I must say, sometimes a little part of me is noticing that maybe someone is noticing what I'm doing. A little part of me is there. So whatever aspect of the praying I'm doing in that moment, if I'm aware of it, aware that I might be seen, to that extent, I have some attachment to it, and I know that. Don't let others see. Jesus recommended. If we wish to give alms or make a donation to charity, do so secretly. And don't let others know who the giver is. Well, my goodness, they pass that basket around and I hold that money up, and the person with the basket notices who's putting it in the basket. It's me, myself, and I. Thank you very much. I'm giving. And somehow I know others give by automatic deduction. But there's something special for me with writing a check and taking it to church and just the act of giving. But that does involve someone seeing. And here Jesus says, do so secretly, so we can avoid attachment. Just want to avoid attachment. Jesus teaches us to do everything without anyone knowing. In other words, his aim is to teach non-attachment. This kind of practice destroys selfishness and overcomes sin. So that's the reason to give in secret, to pray in secret, so that we don't allow selfishness to enter into our thoughts, keep ourselves not attached to these things, and therefore overcome sin. These teachings of Buddhism and Christianity are the same. They have the same meaning, namely to destroy attachment. Destroy attachment. Attachment does not lead to peace of mind. Attachment does not lead to peace of mind. Doing things in secret leads to peace of mind. To the extent we are noticed in our prayers and our giving, there's some opportunity for attachment to sneak in, which doesn't nourish our total peace of mind. We should do all religious duties and practices without others knowing. In the end, it's like they don't exist anymore and we don't exist either. We don't exist. You see, being aware of them as existing is somehow an attachment. Just having them be part of our experience of life and not even having our I, me, mine exist anymore either. We're just in the flow. We're in the flow. We're experiencing the flow of life. And that way, we don't exist. We're not aware of our existence. We're in the flow. There's no good, no evil, just the flow of things. It takes an I mind to say, oh, that's good, they're good. Like me, I'm good. Oh, that was evil, I did evil, they do evil. It's that I mind consciousness. There's no good or evil, just the flow. There's no virtue, no sin. There's no happiness, no suffering. We're just in the flow. Not aware of being happy or not aware of suffering, or just flowing. And finally, as the title of the book says, not even any religion. This is the highest level of religion. To be in the flow. To notice when our mind is attached to certain things. And to remember to say, thank you for sharing. And then return to the flow. Sometimes during those parts of my day when I want to be in the flow and just not be aware of myself, my mind pops in and starts thinking about things that it got activated by the prior day usually. And I'll have to remind my mind, thank you for sharing. It's not your time right now. Sometimes I do that again and again and again. That's okay. Just those momentary moments of awareness when there's not even any religion. That concludes what I prepared for us today. Any comments or questions before we close up for this morning?
It's a lot to think about, unless we want to get rid of all our thoughts, right? It's yeah, it's all challenging stuff, but it's good stuff. The attachment thing is really big. To be able to notice things that are disturbing you and to trace it to an attachment is helpful.
Yes. And attachments are based on the idea that there's an I.
Yeah.
This is me, that I did it. It's affecting me. And what am I going to do about it? And all those thoughts would seem so natural. What am I going to do about this? I don't like what's happening out there. What's mine to do? What am I going to do? I'm taking this personally.
Mhm.
I'm taking these protests personally. I'm taking this COVID-19 personally. What's mine to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah,
Rather
that what is
than,
mine to do freeing. It's pretty freeing.
Mhm. Rather than being in the flow of causes and effects in life and noticing that we're just here by the grace of God and we're part of the flow. We're not going to be here forever, but we are here right now. And we're grateful.
Mhm.
And when we're no longer here, well, that'll be another adventure. But right now, we're just in the flow, stepping back from our own mind so that we can be in what in Christianity is called joy, which is just that inner glow of peace. When we feel at ease with ourselves and at ease with the world, can we have faith in the way things are right now? Have faith. How we perceive it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start our closing chant here if we're all ready to do that.
Mhm.
Let's take 3 nice deep breaths together. And with a deep in breath. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been real.
Woohoo. Y'all have a good week.
Have a
Have a
good
great
day. Have a good week too. Yeah.
Have a beautiful
Bye.
day. Okay. Love
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.